So we're here getting ready for melody writing for level 7. So what's the difference between chord tones and non-chord tones when it comes to melody writing? Well, in level 5, you learned how to compose a parallel period using a 4-measure antecedent phrase. Now, the antecedent asks the question, and a 4-measure consequent phrase, and a consequent concludes the answer. So, share in the chat box with me. Have you been composing and going through all of the steps that you learned in level 5? I'm anxious to hear from you. In level 6, you learned about unstable and stable scale degrees in melody writing using the status, conjunct, and disjunct voice leading in a parallel period. Let me know if you've implemented those techniques into your melody writing. And today in level 7, you're going to learn about chord tones and non-chord tones when writing a melody in a parallel period. Now we begin with the harmonic chord progression. So we want to map out the root quality chord symbols. And today we're going to learn what are those root quality chord symbols anyway. I'm Gloria St. Germain from Ultimate Music Theory, and we're going to learn the 3 tips to composing using chord tones and non-chord tones in level 7 melody writing. So we're going to build our foundation from the Intermediate Rudiments workbook, and we're going to use them in the level 7 supplemental workbook. And we're going to discover how you can use this simple process using chord tones and non-chord tones. And it really embellishes the melody, right? Because music would be pretty boring if all we used was chord tones. So let's go through the process. So tip number 1, you writing this down? Tip number 1 is we want to identify the key of the melody. All right, so here we have our melody, and we see that we have no sharps and no flats, and we don't have any accidentals indicating that it might be the relative minor of C major, because those are the only 2 choices, C major, A minor. So the key must be C major. Yay, we got one right. All right, so tip number 2, identify the chord tones of the primary chords for C major. So 1, 4, 5, or 5, 7 of the chord tones. And we always want to use root quality chord symbols. All right, so let's check out our chord tones. So for chord number 1 would be C, E, G. Chord number 4 would be F, A, C. And chord number 5, and we also want to add the 5, 7 in there because they may use that 5, 7 chord, would be G, B, D, and we may have an F in there. So now we want to kind of analyze our music. And we want to say, well, we see that we have C here. We have our 2 Gs, which is in the C chord. And then here we see that we have a D in it and we have an F. So that would be our 5, 7 chord because we're putting our root quality chord symbols above. Here we see that we have an E and a G, which would tell us we're back in C. And then because this is a parallel period, these measures are repeated. So then we have our C and C again. And then we have our G7 and we're going to end on C. Now, if I just played the music using chord tones, what would that sound like? So let's have a listen. So I'm just going to use the chord tones in the music, not adding any embellishments of passing tones or neighbor tones. And we'll talk about those in a minute. So here would be our little melody, starting at the beginning. Well, it's okay, but it's not awesome, fantastic, is it? So now what we want to do is we want to add passing tones and neighbor tones. So what is that? So a passing tone is a note that is in between 2 chord tones and moves like a bridge, connecting one chord tone to the next chord tone. A neighbor tone can move either up or down between chord tones. So for example, if we have a chord tone of G, we could use a neighbor tone above or below. If we have a passing tone, we're stepping to the next chord tone. So let's do a little analysis. When we're looking at our first measure, we see that we have both a passing tone and a neighbor tone. So here is our neighbor tone, right? We're moving up, and here's our passing tone. And our passing tone is moving from one chord tone to the next chord tone. Does that make sense? Okay, so now in our next measure, we have E, we have G, and we know that this is our C chord, C, E, G. But the note that we don't have is the F. So this would be our passing tone. And it simply passes from one chord tone to the next. That makes it easy, right? Now we have a G7. Now, GBD is our G chord, and the seventh note would be F. So here we see that we've used D, which is in the G chord, but we've also used F, which would make it a G7 chord. But the passing tone between the chord tones is E. So I'm going to circle that one. So now we can see we have a passing tone, right? This just is going to really sound great when we hear what does it sound like now. In the next one, we've got our C chord. Now we already learned, because this is coming from our C chord, we know we have C, E, and G, but our passing note is F. So we're just going to circle our passing note. What we're going to do is circle our non-chord tones. What is a non-chord tone? A passing tone or a neighbor tone. So now we're in the key of our C, and we see that we have a neighbor tone. So a neighbor tone is simply a note that moves up or down and returns back to the original chord tone. So here we had G, and this one went up. It could have gone down, but in this case, it went up to the A. It could have gone down to the F and returned back to the G. And then we see that we have another one here. We have a little passing tone, and this passing tone is moving us back into the C. And finally, we have our passing tone moving up to our G. So far, we're in the key of C, right? These are all the chord tones for C major. Now we see that we have G, and we simply have chord tones in that measure. Did you notice there's no passing tones and there's no neighbor tones? So not every single measure needs to have passing tones or neighbor tones. We don't need to be busy all the time. Sometimes we just want to keep it simple. Just give me a chord tone and I'm good to go. And in the last measure, we see, well, we've gotten pretty fancy here. We see we have a neighbor tone. Did it go up or down? This time it went up, right? And now we're going to have one more time, and this time we're going to have a passing tone. And this one went between E and resolved back to the C. So what have we learned today is that the first thing we want to do is identify the key. After we identify the key, we want to write out the chord tones so that we know what are we looking for. 1, C, E, G, just the primary chords, 4, F, A, C, and 5, G, B, D. And for the 7 chord, we can also add the F. Then we're going to analyze our melody, and we're going to say, what are the chord tones within each measure? And we're going to add our root quality chord symbol above. Okay, so our root quality chord symbol is C, C, G7, because we had an F in there, C, and so on. And then tip number 3 is that we're going to add some embellishments. We're going to add some passing tones or some neighbor tones, and we're going to use non-chord tones to move from one chord tone to the next one. So when I started, I played just the chord tones for you, but now let's see, what does it sound like if we add our non-chord tones? Okay, are you ready for this one, the big reveal? Maybe you can play it in your head. I wonder if you can already guess what it is. So here it goes. Ready? Well, that sounds way better than just playing the chord tones, right? So I think it's really, really fun. Now, here's a little bonus tip for you. Write out the outline of your melody on the whiteboard. When I'm teaching melody writing, I love the Ultimate Music Theory whiteboards. This is the large teacher whiteboard. You can also get the small student whiteboard. I use them all the time because it's just easy to write out your melody on the whiteboard and then experiment with different ways to use non-chord tones to complete your melody. So you may go up, you may go down, and learn to kind of hear it in your head so that as you're playing, I often have my students just play it like this. And so that way they're kind of fingering through it and they start to hear it in their head and then take it up to the piano and play it on the piano. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and share because we're all about sharing the love. Don't forget to comment and subscribe also to our Ultimate Music Theory YouTube channel and our Ultimate Music Theory Facebook group. Where you can connect with industry experts and colleagues and just share your ideas or ask questions, and we're happy to help you there. So Ultimate Music Theory Facebook group and also our Ultimate Music Theory YouTube channel. And remember, we release new videos every week, so keep it coming. If you're looking for something in particular, shoot us a quick message and we'll be sure to put that together for you. So happy melody writing in your Level 7 supplemental workbook. And don't forget to grab your answer books. In the answer books, you'll see one possible answer for each question. And it's a really good resource if you're just starting out to learn how to do melody writing, or if you're just starting out in teaching melody writing, you want to make sure you've got something that kind of give you a little hand in that. So imagine, compose, and explore melody writing. Have a great day. Thanks for joining me.